Just from a technique perspective, and this might just be the school I went to, I didn't learn half of what I've learned in Evolve in those 6 years of training and paid $60,000 for. Definitely nowhere near technical level that I gain out of Evolve. I'm Alia Goldfarb, and I live in Fort Collins, Colorado, and I've been teaching for about 15 years. I have a split between beginners, and I also have a pretty robust mid to professional level singer, predominantly training in either musical theater or more rock contemporary. I was very fortunate to start at a young age at conservatory, so classical training to begin with, and then found my way off into other styles and training methods. All one-to-one, more on the side. It was very much a part-time role for me. At that moment, I was still working with nonprofits for musicians and had very few selected students. And that's what I was doing at that time, but looking to expand. That was really the driver, was to be my own boss and to do the thing that I love most in life. So here we are. And then for me, I was running into very specific technical, sometimes health-related issues with certain students that I didn't know how to answer. And I didn't know where to send them anymore. I was like, maybe I should train and know more, even though I already have a master's degree. And I definitely saw just how you approached teaching and theory and anatomy and all of those pieces was really what I was looking for. One piece of it was actually that there was the willingness to admit or see that every body is built different and rather not one size fits all. And the other piece was definitely the somatic approach, which is very near and dear to me, but I hadn't seen done from a singing perspective. And I saw you do that with great effect in a 45-minute workshop or something. And that sold it for me, honestly. I think going through obviously all the video content, I used all of those for myself and applied it to my own work. And then I started testing it out with my trusted few students that I had at the time. And I think the weekly calls are really incredibly beneficial to just questions and ideas that you maybe don't consider when you're by yourself in your little room teaching someone. What I think is super effective is being able to go back to things, because obviously each video is really full of information and there are different tacks to things. So being able to just revisit an idea or even see them come out maybe a little bit differently in the calls or in workshops, I think that's been really productive to see it applied in different scenarios. I have seen things work differently in other countries. But here at our very traditional kind of college to graduate school level work, the value I gained out of it was perhaps much more around traditional pedagogical ideas on a very high level. That was incredibly helpful. What you don't necessarily get, and this isn't true at every school, is a lack of actual hands-on trial and error. At least in my training was this is the way it's taught. We do one technique and it better fit. And if it doesn't work, they're not getting it. And that just always seemed lacking to me. So then going off and being able to do something, first of all, with artists like yourself, we're allowing for really different approaches and different questions to come in is, I find, more tangible. I wanted to have a much broader understanding and capacity and toolkit to teach different types of people. Just from a technique perspective, and this might just be the school I went to, I didn't learn half of what I've learned in Evolve in those 6 years of training and paid $60,000 for. Definitely nowhere near technical level that I gain out of Evolve. And I think that is unique to you as well, perhaps, and what you offer. I think there's some really incredible people in the cohort. While you always think through really in depth with answers to some hard questions, I think it's also just the conversation that happens organically in calls or on the message board, just exchanging, hey, I've tried this approach, give it a go, see what happens. And then being able to feedback that has been really interesting to see and eye-opening. So that's ongoing. Again, the option to be able to go back to some of your exercises if I've forgotten something and revisiting or trying something with slightly different nuance after a call or after a workshop. I can think of just recently on the belting workshop, that darn cat. I knew that exercise, but I forgot about it. And it's so funny. And so I made a video of it for one of my students who's 11, brilliant little 11-year-old, very talented, with holding my cat. And it was just the most fun for her to try that. And now she's belting at 11 and it's incredible. The playfulness of even the calls. I know you're not necessarily holding up a cat, but it was still playful. And yeah, I think going back and forth on that, the also the cutting edge stuff you bring in with some of the specialists you're bringing in with those calls is it's just cool. It keeps me on my toes. I feel like I don't have to go and pay a bunch of money to go to Nats or something like that. Of course, those are wonderful as well, but I can also do it this way. And it just feels a little bit more relevant specifically to my more contemporary work that I'm doing now.
What would your advice be to those if they were looking from the outside in?
I came to the program with already well over 10 years of teaching experience and having done all this training. The nuanced conversation or the different ideas of how to approach something if it does get stuck or just a different reframe is so beneficial to having conversation. It keeps you fresh and it keeps me inspired also to just try new things or try at it again from a different perspective. So that piece is really valuable, even if you feel like you've done all the training, you have all the technique perfectly down, there's definitely going to be something new or something interesting to take from that. And it's really for people who also are seeking community, who are looking for a cohort, a little bit more of that. It's not just the one-on-one thing. You can easily just follow long videos on YouTube. Frankly, you could also do that without any further conversation, but it is that we get to talk to you, to each other, all the specialists that you bring in. Those are just really valuable resources. And it's ongoing resources if you do what I did. So that's really wonderful and helpful, I think. And so valuable. Again, I think you undercharge dramatically.